Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Hi, Brody. Good to see you.
Hi, I was just gonna tell you, the virtual background that I had on last time and I'm gonna put on this time is they were laughing gulls. You were correct. I looked at it after that Zoom meeting, and they were laughing gulls.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a bird I don't know very well. I think I've only seen, when I was younger, I was in Florida for a while and I saw a lot of them there, but I haven't seen them in many years, except there was one on the Carpinteria State Beach last year that I did get to see. So that was fun.
Yeah. Have you seen that the yellow-crowned night heron has been checking around?
Yeah. So there's, and that's kind of a new thing, right? I mean, they had not been in Santa Barbara County for many years, and then just a few years ago started showing up again in the Carpinteria Salt Marsh. And now they're up at Goleta Beach Park as well, where Suzanne, who just joined us, has taken photos of them. I like seeing your photos of the yellow-crowned night heron, Suzanne, whenever you post those on eBird. So yeah, so they're expanding, they're breeding successfully, they're moving out into new places. So that's great to see. That's exciting.
Yeah. There were two other things that I wanted to ask. One, have you ever seen this bird before?
Let me zoom in so I can, okay. Yeah. So to me, that looks like a female black-headed grosbeak would be my guess.
Oh, okay, because I did not know what it was, and I was just like, what the heck is this? I took a picture with my camera, I printed it up, and yeah.
That would be my guess, but consult your field guide, and if the bird comes back and you can really get a good look at it when you know what to look for, that's always a good thing to do to confirm. Okay, well,
my dad was actually the one who took the picture of it. And then one last thing, I saw a California towhee that barely had a nub on its tail.
Oh wow! So maybe I guess it could have been molting, but usually when they're molting, they just lose a few feathers at a time. If the whole tail goes away, that's maybe there was a run-in with a cat or a coyote or something, and the towhee barely got away.
Yeah. I was thinking it also could have been it could have been a young one. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of detail in the photo from this end, so yeah, I'm not sure, but yeah, that's also a possibility. The fledglings are out and about, and they don't really look as long-tailed as the adults. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. Apologies for sort of jumping the gun there, but welcome to the Carpinteria Birdwatchers meeting for whatever this is, Thursday, September 10th, 2020. Glad to see you all here. This meeting will be on Gulls Part 2. So last meeting we had Gulls Part 1, where we talked about the 4 common gull species we have here in Santa Barbara County. This week we'll talk about the slightly more exotic 6. So we're going to cover 6 more species, and it had been 5, but I threw in another one, so it's up to 6. And I was saying before the meeting started, I feel pretty comfortable with the big 4. I feel pretty comfortable giving my opinions about, as we're looking at photos of the 4 gulls that we have around here and see a lot of. I am not as comfortable with my ability to give, useful or at least, very reliable identification opinions about some of these gulls we're going to be seeing tonight. So, it'll be sort of a learning experience. I had invited a local expert, Mark Holmgren, to participate, and he had said he would, but then I was traveling today and I wasn't able to confirm with him. Hopefully he remembers and shows up, but if not, then we'll just do the best we can with who we have, and that would be me and the rest of us. So we'll do our best. And with gulls, it's always good to be a little humble and just sort of see what you see and try and figure it out as best you can. But the learning is part of the fun. So there will be learning involved tonight for sure. Can't guarantee much beyond that, but we'll do what we can. So before I jumped into the gulls, though, I wanted to, let's see, I should introduce the co-hosts. So our co-hosts, as always, are Tom Beland and Laurel Luby and Jenny Slaughter. So hello to all of you, and thank you for helping to run the show. And also, before we get going, I was already chatting briefly with Brody, which was fun, about his photos of the birds he's had locally. Does anyone else have anything they want to share before we get started? Any really fun birding experience you've had in the last few weeks, or just questions or comments or anything of a general nature before we jump into the meeting topic?
Brady was learning how to draw, but I guess he has school now. But John Muir Laws is having a drawing class through Audubon, and it's free, and anybody can take it. And I took it, and I could draw birds better at the end of taking the class.
Yeah, that's a good point, Andrew. I watched one of those, I think, because you forwarded it to me. He was talking about birds of prey or something, I think, and it was really great, and I really loved it. And I said, oh, I've got to go back and start these from the beginning, because they're already in progress with that one.
He said they were all online so that you can go back and look at them.
Yeah, and that is really a highly recommended thing to do that I should have done more of. The word is that, if you draw birds, it will vastly improve your ability to recognize and appreciate detail in the birds you're looking at, and it can really be helpful with identification.
My son's in Oregon, and he's in an escape zone, or he has to, he's evacuated, and so he's on the phone right now, so I'm going to be gone for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. So I think I saw someone else waving their hand, but I don't remember who it was. So if someone else has something to share, can you chime in and let us know what it is? Just go ahead and unmute. I see, Joy, I see you were waving your hand. Did you have something to share?
I just want to say that I am thoroughly enjoying this. I work in the jail, and there's a lot of concrete in the jail, and this has changed my life. I know I've only gone to one meeting, but I went out last week. I live close to the beach, and enjoyed the Gulls in a way I never have before. And I am just thrilled by this group. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, I went out and looked at gulls after the last meeting too. I was like, wow, I got to go look at some gulls. They're fun to look at. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else before we? I see Courtney or Courtney's significant other. I forget your name. You're waving.
Yeah, we just both wanted to say thanks for doing gulls last week. We were so inspired. The very next day, we went out to Andrew Clark to identify gulls, and we did a great job. And we saw a ring-necked duck at the same time, so that worked out well.
Oh, wow, cool. Yeah, that's a pretty unusual bird for, it's starting to be the time of year where a lot of other new birds are showing up, but it's exciting to see them first appear.
Yeah, we didn't actually know it was a ring-necked duck. We misidentified it, but found out later on that's what it was.
Well, that also is part of the fun of this time of year. I do that myself a great deal, misidentifying them and then hopefully figuring it out eventually.
But thank you for the class. It inspired us.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, well, before I jump into Gulls Part 2, I did have a little bit of pre-Gull content. I asked Linus Blomqvist, who's here, to come back. You may remember Linus was in the pelagic birds meeting that we had, and he talked about sea watching and his experiences with sea watching. And Linus recently posted an item to the SBCO birding email list about the Big Sit, which is an annual event, and it's coming up October 10th and 11th, I think. It's a Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked Linus if he would show up and do a little pitch about the Big Sit. Tell us what the Big Sit is and why you're excited about it, or why we should maybe consider participating in it.
Yeah, the idea is very simple. It is to establish a circle somewhere, could be a backyard or anywhere, and to see as many species of bird as you can from within that circle in a day. So this is an event that's been going on for couple of decades, I think, at least, nationally, and they might have been going on in other places before that. So it's a pretty well-established event. It's organized by the New Haven Bird Club. And typically, I don't know how it's going to turn out this year, but in previous years, there's been at least 150 teams participating across the country. And I'm in a way like more excited about it this year because, and I haven't actually done it in the US before, but I'm excited about it this year because it's a type of, it's a birding event you can participate in out in nature in a COVID safe way, because you can just, be on your own in your circle or with family members or, in a safe way. You could probably, fit 2 people. The circle has to be 17 feet in diameter. So you could maybe have a couple of people there. But it's something you can, birding event you can do. They call it semi-competitive. It's sort of like you are trying to see more birds than other teams, but it's not like a life and death kind of type of competition. But it's also a way to connect with other birders, in an event in these times, which is hard. Otherwise, you can go out birding with other people. So here you can, you'll see other teams' results. They'll be posted on eBird. If you want to participate, there's no pre-registration. You just report your sightings on eBird, and I'll give you a link for how to do that. But yeah, you can follow other teams, see how many species they get. There'll be some postings on Facebook and social media. We might send out emails on the local birding list here too, kind of during the day to see how different teams are doing.
I saw you had made a comment in a follow-up in the SBCO birding email list about how you found a previous discussion of where someone had given the opinion that no one would ever get more than 70 species in Santa Barbara County.
Yeah,
a big set.
That's from several years ago. There have been some, slight attempts at a big sit in Santa Barbara County, but the ones I could find evidence of were like a few hours in the morning or something like that. Technically, in this event, you have the full 24 hours of the day. In this case, you can do it. It's the Saturday and Sunday, 11th and 10th and 11th of October. You can only do report one 24-hour chunk at a time, so you can do both, or you can just do one of them. Obviously, you can be out for an hour, 5 hours, however long you want. There's no requirement to be birding for 24 hours.
You don't have to take pictures of everything.
No, you don't. The rules are very simple. There's a set of rules, but it's pretty simple. And again, you don't have to pre-register. You upload your results on eBird, and you kind of tag an email from the competition, and that way it'll be gathered and presented on a website.
You had said that you were. Yeah, go ahead. Keep going, Linus.
No, we're also. John asked me about this actually, how to kind of think about choosing a good location. Because you can always do it in your backyard and it works great. If you want to try to see as many species as possible and maybe beat the record or get more species than it was prophesied that you could ever get in Santa Barbara County, which was 70, then you want to make sure you choose a location where you can see a few different habitats at the same time. So you can maybe if you can see some ocean birds, maybe some shorebirds, and still have, some trees where you can get some warblers. That's a good setup. You don't want to be just in the forest or only see the ocean. You want to try to combine a few different habitats so you can cover a wider range of species.
And you would suggest you were going to maybe do it at Coal Oil Point. Is that right? Because that seems like that's where I would try and do it, because you've got the estuary there, you've got the ocean, you've got some good land habitat you could see into also.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to try. In part because I think it could be a good location, in part because I just live nearby and I feel like it's a little bit of a home turf for me. So I was actually down there the other day and trying to find the exact spot where I would see the most different things, and there's a place there, at least if you only very mildly trespass, where you can see the slough and the sort of canal that goes out to the mouth, and also the ocean and the shore. So it looks pretty promising.
All right, well, good luck. I had mentioned that I was going to maybe take advantage of doing hawk watching at that time. That's in our next meeting, we're going to talk about birds of prey, and I'll talk more about this then, I think. But there's a fire road up above Ramiro Canyon where there's a little spot that Eric Culbertson found that's really good for seeing migrating raptors coming along the front of the Santa Ynez Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking I'd go up there, and it's an excuse to be there maybe longer than I otherwise would, which is good for hawk watching. It's sort of like, fishing or sea watching. You want to kind of throw your hook out there and just wait. And if you wait long enough, something will come by.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do a big sit up there. All right. Well, thank you a lot for bringing it up, and good luck. And if there are questions, Tom, I see you raising your hand.
Yeah. Linus, is the team all Santa Barbara, or can a team be Laurel and I? What is a team?
Oh, sorry if that wasn't clear. So a team would just be anyone within a specific circle, and the circle is 17 foot in diameter.
Okay,
So that's the only, pick a circle. In print, other years you could have had 5 people or 10 people in the circle. You probably not do that this year. But yeah, you just establish, you kind of pin down exactly where your circle is, and then that's your team.
and that's the team.
And in
Okay,
principle, like, you're sort of competing against any other circle anywhere else.
okay.
And the organizers of it have good instructions. Like there's a website, and I've got links to all this in the blog post on carpwithoutcars.org
Okay, great.
For this.
I was going to
meeting.
mention the website. Yeah, it's thebigsit.org, but if you have it
Yeah.
on the website, that's great.
I have it there too, and also I linked there to one. As I was looking through previous years, I found that in the last Big Sit, the second place team of the whole event was from up at Los Osos. And Mark Holmgren, who I had hoped would be here to talk about gulls, was also on that team. So this is going to be great. I was going to be able to pester him for details about their second place finish, second only to a team down in Guatemala. But yeah, he's not here. So maybe next time, if I can get him to come back, we can talk to him. And we'll talk about the Big Sit again as we get closer. We can go into more detail about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Linus. I really appreciate you coming, and I hope you can stay for gulls as well. I don't know how much of a gull fan you are.
I'm one of those very reluctant gull watchers, I'm afraid. But I'll stay for a bit, and I might have to drop out for some work stuff in a little bit. But I'll stay for a second.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for showing up. And all right, anything else, either for Linus or just in general before we get going on our gull talk? This is your opportunity. And I don't necessarily see everybody on screen when we get to a big meeting size. So if you're free to unmute and just talk. You don't have to get.
Aren't they doing a big biodiversity thing for Audubon this week? Between the 5th and, I don't know, the weekend?
Yeah, down at the state beach, I think they're doing something in connection with that. Does that
I just
sound
thought
familiar?
everybody was supposed to report into eBird with whatever you saw during this week, and they're going to make a big thing of it.
There was a thing that the head of the interpretive stuff at the state beach, whose name I always forget. It's becoming a running joke. Some people's names I just can't remember. I don't know why. Anyway, she was talking about this biodiversity day or some sort of thing, and it was in conjunction with iNaturalist. Tom, you were at this meeting where this was talked about, right? Do you remember anything about this?
Yeah, a little bit about it. I think we could just put in not just birds, but anything, lizards.
Right.
Yeah. Go for it.
It seemed to me that it was all this week, starting on the 5th.
Okay, well, tell you what, I don't want to take too much time with just us sort of talking about what we don't quite remember or don't really know. Forward anything about that you have to me, Andrea, and I'll share it with Tom, and we can send it out to the email list for the Carpinteria Birdwatchers group. People get more detail that way. Does that sound good? There's a way to go forward. Yeah. Okay, Brody, I see you got your hand up.
I put a Big Sit link in the chat box.
Excellent, thank you. So you have that. If you
Thank you.
You can go there and find out more about the Big Sit. So thanks. Okay, last chance for anything other than gulls. We're going to be all gulls all the time from here on out. Okay, let me start the presentation. Let me share my screen. Oh, wait a second. Let me not do that. Let me try that again. One more try. Okay, yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay, so are you seeing my presentation slide? My gulls part 2, the slightly more exotic 6. Okay, great.
Yes.
Go ahead and present. All right, so I'm going to just skip over all the general gull stuff that we talked about last time. If you didn't see the last meeting, it's available on YouTube. You can go watch it and find out all my advice about how to bird gulls in particular, how to identify them and what to look for, but we'll just jump right into the species. So these are the 4 that we covered last time, the big 4. And these are the species that we have commonly on the beaches around here in Santa Barbara County, or not just beaches, but mostly on beaches throughout the year. So if you go out looking at gulls, you're going to probably have a good chance of seeing these 4. And then in this session, we're going to talk about the slightly more exotic 6. So these are the eBird histograms of, the percentages of eBird checklists submitted during that week of the year for each of these species that had that species, if that made sense. But you can follow that and see from the thickness of the green line how common that species is during that part of the year. And the 6 that we're going to talk about in this meeting are Bonaparte's gull, Mew Gull, Herring Gull, Iceland Gull, which in this case is the Thayer's subspecies of the Iceland Gull. That is it used to be considered a separate species, Thayer's Gull, and then it was lumped by the powers that be and merged with the Iceland Gull as a subspecies. So it's in the field guide as Iceland Gull because that's the species name, but the one we see is the Thayer's subspecies. And then Glaucous-Winged Gull. And those are the slightly more exotic 5 that I talked about when we did this session last year. And I added one more. I added the Western Glaucous-Winged Gull hybrid, which some people call an Olympic gull. It's it's the hybrid of the Western gull and the Glaucous-Winged Gull that around the Olympic Peninsula in Washington is actually more common than either of the other 2 species. So it's a hybrid gull that shows up where the 2 species interbreed freely, and you get they do back crosses, and you get different amounts of Western and Glaucous-Winged in the individual gulls. So they're very diverse, and at least for me, somewhat confusing. So you can look forward to that somewhat confusing part of the discussion as we look at photos of those later on. But those are the species we're going to look at. So I'm going to jump in and start with this gull. This is one that is not that hard to see around here in the winter months, although very difficult to non-existent in the summer months. And this is a Mew Gull. You can't really tell from this photo, but it's relatively small. So it's one of the smaller gulls we have around here. It's got a very light mantle. We've talked about this gray shade on the back as a key identifying characteristic when you're trying to identify the adult gulls, at least, that have that. So a Mew Gull has a relatively light mantle. It's basically about as light as a ring-billed gull's mantle. The ring-billed was one of the big 4 we talked about last time. So it's kind of similar to a ring-billed gull. Its beak is really small. Like the feature about a Mew Gull that really jumps out at me anytime I see one is just got a tiny little beak. And in the winter months, it'll get a little bit of a ring, like a faint ring, kind of like the ring-billed gull has, except in the ring-billed's case, it's really bold, and in the Mew Gull, it's faint to non-existent, like in this bird.
You can sort of see a ring-billed gull in the background.
On this photo? Oh yeah, right up here.
Yeah.
Good call, Brody. You are again teaching me to pay more attention, so that's good. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna click out and go over to the All About Birds page on Mew Gulls. And this we did in the last meeting too. It's a way for me to be lazy and not have to prepare so many slides, but also it's a way for me to acquaint you with this online field guide at the All About Birds website. It's from Cornell, the same people who create eBird. And if you click on the species names in eBird, it will take you to a species specific page where if you scroll down, you'll get a link to this All About Birds page for that species. So here is the range of the Mew Gull. And as you can see, so it's a Western North American species. It breeds up here in the north. And it's generally the case, I think, that the lighter a gull's mantle, the more northerly it tends to get. I think there's like a basic like adaptation thing where if you're hanging around in the snow, or a lot of the time where you're in places that have snow, having a lighter mantle is helpful camouflage. So they breed up here, and then in the winter months they come down along the Pacific coast, so we get them down here. And in terms of ID info, we'll look through the plumages that the ring-billed gull goes through. And again, I'm going to skip ahead to the juvenile and then work my way backwards as it gets older. So here is your juvenile ring-billed gull. It's sort of, well, I'll just read what it says. So juveniles are pale brown with white feather edging. So this pattern of these brown feathers with these thick white edges, that's like a young Mew Gull look. It says, note the dark barring on the undertail coverts. As we talked about last time, look at the overall size and shape. If you're seeing a juvenile gull like this, hopefully you're seeing it in proximity to other gulls that you can easily identify, and that gives you a yardstick. You can say, wow, that's a really little gull. And then of course you're going to check the beak structure, because beak structure is key in a gull, and you just go, wow, that thing's got a tiny little beak, and you're well on your way to figuring out that it's a Mew Gull at that point. Then as they age,
Hey, John. Mark just joined. Just wanted to let you know.
John, you're muted.
yeah, thank you, Linus. How long was I muted? Was I like talking for the last 10 minutes with no one hearing anything?
No, just 30 seconds.
No,
Okay.
yeah, you just started being muted right as you went to this slide.
Cool. Well, I'm sure I was very eloquent and informative during those 30 seconds, and you'll just have to take my word for it. So anyway, Jenny, you told me that Mark has joined. So Mark, I can't see too many people on the screen when I'm in the screen sharing mode, but I'm assuming you can hear me and that you're here.
Hi, John, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, allow me to interrupt the gull discussion to introduce Mark Holmgren. So Mark has agreed to join and be pestered by me about gulls, which is really fun for me to do. I do it regularly via email, and this is a chance for me to do it more publicly. So Mark is, I apologize, I didn't prepare properly. You were formerly the vertebrate collections manager at the Cheadle Center at UCSB, is that sort of right?
Collections manager from 1984 to 2010 at UCSB's museum, which originally was called Museum of Vertebrate Zoology, then graduated to Museum of Systematics and Ecology, and now is embedded within CBER, the Cheadle Center for Biodiversity and Ecological Restoration. So, and I've been retired for 10 years, so, but I still maintain connections with them, and all is good in retirement.
Well, and in your retirement, you are relatively active because you're out there birding constantly, which I know because I'm following your exploits on eBird all the time. And then you're one of the eBird reviewers in Santa Barbara County, right? Because I know you've been the person to helpfully contact me when I post a photo of a misidentified bird, and you say, John, have you considered that this might be something different?
And vice versa, John. I appreciate you for monitoring the photos that are incorrectly identified of mine. So thank you.
A much smaller proportion of the ongoing corrections are me correcting you, but that is nice to hear. And then you are involved also. The other big thing I know you're really involved in is the breeding bird survey, or the breeding something. I'm not sure I've got the name right, but I know that every year around breeding time, you're out there telling people, hey, submit your breeding bird reports, and I should do a better job of that myself. But if you want to give a little plug for that, this is an opportunity for you to do that. Yeah,
this is good timing for the breeding bird study to come out because we're looking for an article in the Independent next week. And simultaneous with that, we will send out a broad email to all you birders on SBCO Birding and others. But the breeding bird study is public, the data is available, and one simply needs to go to the Audubon Society website, which is santabarbaraudubon.org, and you can both submit records. We're a little bit late in the breeding season, we're sort of at the end of the breeding season for that, but to review, to view the data and play with it and manipulate it and pose questions of the database. That's also available at the Audubon website. So santabarbaraudubon.org will get you everything that's involved, that is part of the breeding bird study right now. That's great. This is only Santa Barbara County data. So it's quite unique. I don't know any other county that has anything like this. And a whole lot of new information has turned up as a result of this. And it's going to be very much fun to see how people dig into it and what new things they gather from it.
Yeah, I look forward to checking it out myself. I know you formerly had an interface to it that went away because the platform it was based on was retired. Is that right? And so you needed to find a new way to present the data.
Yeah, exactly. Google Fusion Table shut down last December, And so we've worked since then to, with UCSB people, to come up with a ARC Info, which is an Esri product. I don't know what Esri stands for, so I can't tell you, but they do very sophisticated computer graphics. And if at some point in the discussion we want to look at that, I can pull that up and do a screen share.
Okay, well, I would like to maybe talk to you after this meeting. We could do it in a future meeting, because that could take a whole.
That'd probably be better.
And it'd be great to really see what's in there and get people acquainted with the data, because it's
exactly.
It's
I think that'd be
extensive.
worthwhile.
Okay, well, let's do that. Thanks. Okay, well, I'm gonna, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna jump back into the gull talk. We're sort of in progress on this. I talked about the fact that last meeting we talked about the big four. We talked about the Western gull, the California gull, the Heermann's gull, and the ring-billed gull. So those are the four species that I feel like if you get those down, you're going to be able to be confident about the majority of the birds you see around here when you go looking at gulls. But this time I wanted to talk about the weirder, different gulls that beyond that big four. So the first one we were talking about here is the Mew Gull. And I just went to the All About Birds site and kind of am clicking through the plumages, just so you can kind of see the plumages of that bird as it ages. So this is a juvenile Mew Gull. Is there anything in particular you'd point out, Mark, about a juvenile Mew Gull to do we get juvenile Mew Gulls down here? Are they still in that plumage by the time we get them?
That's a good question. Generally, they're not. They don't come down till around late October, I think, at the earliest, and don't really start coming down in mass until November. And we don't usually, they've passed from this plumage by that time, I believe. I can't remember any juvenile Mew Gulls that we've seen.
All right, we'll move on then.
The thing that I would say, with any of these birds that you're looking at is structure, structure, structure. The more you become familiar with the structure of these birds, the other things, plumages, differences in plumages, that will fall into place nicely. It's really all about structure, and I bet you Linus will agree with me.
Yep.
Agree, Linus.
What color are those legs?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty pale, right? The leg color here. I mean, I'm not sure what you'd call it. They're not bright pink like a Western gull, like an adult Western gull would have really pink legs. And again, this is, with all the species we're talking about in this meeting, I am not as familiar with these birds. I have not seen as many of them. I haven't studied them. So I have a much weaker sense of the range of individual variation. So I don't know if this is a really representative leg color on a first winter Mew Gull. Mark, you're welcome to chime in, but I don't know. They look relatively light to me.
Yeah, this looks similar to the leg color, I guess, of California gull also. They have this muted grayish pink kind of coloration, and so but it's variable at that age, and it changes as the bird ages. So
one thing I'm curious about, Mark, so we're looking here at so this is, more by the time we see it, we might see this plumage on a first year Mew Gull, right? And so we're starting to get the mantle shade coming in. That's something you pointed out to me, when I was first struggling with gulls. Like you can take advantage of that mantle shade even before it's fully filled in. If there's even a few feathers there, you can see what color it's going to be. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. If you can get a few of those mantle colors in, that can lead you down a path that you then can kind of use it as a hypothesis and follow it up with other features. But a first tip-off beyond structure, the first tip-off is structure, of course, but then beyond that, if you can see some of those mantle colors coming in, and if you know the difference in the adult mantle colors of California Mew, ringbill, and Mew and ringbill, then you'll get a clue as to what direction you should start thinking further.
Yeah, and structure-wise, a Mew Gull is not that dissimilar from a ring-billed gull, right? And the mantle is sort of a lighter shade like a ring-billed gull. If you were looking at this bird, or if I were looking at this bird, my default might be to think, gee, is that a ring-billed gull? Like, what would I be looking for to tell me that's not a first-year ring-billed gull, that it's actually a first-year Mew Gull?
I would disagree a little bit about the structure, and the structural difference between ring-billed and Mew is really important. bill structure, head shape, both of those are quite different. And if they seem similar, that's where one needs to screw their brains in and create the differences so that they stand out in your mind. The bill is and you would see this, I'm sure you have some other photos that are perfectly perpendicular view of the head, but the mandible is very straight. The bottom of the mandible is quite straight. And here I'm using mandible versus maxilla. The upper mandible, quote unquote, is the maxilla.
So this part of the beak is the maxilla, is that right?
Yeah.
And the mandible is the lower beak, you're saying?
Is the lower one. And so the bottom edge of that mandible, mandible is quite straight and usually only a slight gonadial angle. And if you'll point to the angle there near the tip, that's what we call the gonadial angle.
Yeah.
So that's minimal on a Mew Gull and slightly enlarged on a ring-billed gull.
Okay, and you know, we've got a lot of slides to get through, so I'm gonna start zipping and go fast, but I really appreciate being able to ask you those kinds of questions. I'm just gonna have to limit myself so we're not here for 4 hours. I'm gonna skip that video. So here is a non-breeding adult Mew Gull. So an adult Mew Gull that we see, this is a good example of the kind of, you know, appearance the bird might have, right? And you know, to me, that beak really does just stand out. Like I know I always tell people you shouldn't just pick one feature, especially with a gull, and fixate on it to the exclusion of all else, because you got to look at a range of characteristics and really weigh everything. But with a Mew Gull, I almost feel like that beak gives it away. Like it's just so small. What else could it be around here? Okay, I'm gonna. There's a breeding adult, which do we ever see them in the breeding plumage here? Do you ever get like adult plumage Mew Gulls, or are they gone by the time they look like this?
No, virtually they can look like this here. I mean, this is quite a brilliant bill color and a fully reddish maroon eye ring, and but we can get some birds that look like that here.
Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go back to the presentation slides then and move forward to this next species.
Can I say just an interesting fact about the Mew Gull?
Yeah, Linus.
That strikes me because I've done most of my birding in Sweden where I grew up, and we have Mew Gulls there too. It's one of the kind of pan-Arctic or sort of circumpolar species that you get across northernmost North America, but it goes all the way through Russia, Siberia, all the way to Northern Europe.
So it's a bird you're familiar with from your
It is, yeah, actually.
pre-Santa Barbara birding.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and I didn't really talk about this before, but the format is I'm going to go through all these 5 species and 1 hybrid fairly quickly, just to kind of go through the plumages, and then I've got a bunch of photos of them actually, on the beaches locally, mixed in with other gulls that are easier for me to identify, and we can kind of talk about what we're seeing there and go through the process of how do you identify this bird.
I hope you'll tell us what this bird is eventually.
Yeah, well, so in these photos, I picked photos I took. I identified this in eBird as a Glaucous-Winged Gull. I'm a little concerned by the darkness of the wingtips. I want those to be a little bit lighter so they really match the shade of the mantle color. But this is the bird I'm using to illustrate Glaucous-Winged Gull. And we can discuss that more. And there are many more examples of sort of questionable IDs later to discuss. But I want to move things kind of quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and click through and look at the plumages at the All About Birds site. Oh, and the range map. So this is that one, the Glaucous-Winged Gull, that famously, interbreeds with the Western gull in the area where their breeding ranges overlap. But this is the year-round range of the Glaucous-Winged Gull, and then I guess in the breeding season they get a little even further north in Alaska, and then in the winter they will show up around where we are, and not in great numbers. Would you say that's true, Mark? Like, you're not going to see a big flock of Glaucous-Winged Gulls. You're going to see like 1s or 2s kind of mixed in with a flock of the more expected species. Is that true in your experience?
Yeah, the purebred ones are relatively uncommon relative to those that are hybrid, part of the hybrid swarm that you're referring to.
Yeah, yeah. So let me look at the pure Glaucous-Winged Gull so you get the idea of what they officially look like. And yeah, I'll start with this bird. So here's our first winter bird. And so structure-wise, pretty similar to a Western gull. Is that right, Mark? About the same size, same basic shape. Pretty similar bill. I guess maybe the Western gull has an even heavier bill, or a more prominent condylar angle.
I think
Anything to add there?
glaucous-wing can be variable. You can have a small billed bird and you can have a large billed bird. And sometimes the bill on glaucous-wing birds can be chunkier than Western. Sometimes Westerns can be chunkier. You know, that's a relatively unreliable feature, I think.
Okay.
What does sometimes occur is the nostril on glaucous-wing gull is you can often see through the nostril. Whereas you look at a Western gull adult and you very well may not be able to see through the nostril. There's something different going on the bill when you get a large billed individual, especially. You can see a light coming through from the other side of the nostril.
Fascinating. And so in terms of things that stand out, I know we're resistant to trusting plumage here, but you know, the big plumage thing with a first-year glaucous-winged gull is this, you know, this uniform coloration, how the primaries that are standing out here are basically the same shade as the coverts on the wing. Would you say that's correct, Mark? That sort of uniform light color?
Yeah, it's a very pale, pale gray primaries. Yeah, and you also have the secondary. This panel here is called the greater secondary coverts. I'm using my pointer. Sorry. Yeah, you got them.
Yeah.
Greater secondary coverts, and they're roughly the same shade.
And you know, when we talked about the Western gull, about the skirt, how the secondaries will kind of stick out beyond the coverts. Is that true in glaucous-winged as well? It looks like there's a little bit of a skirt showing on this bird.
I can't talk about that.
Okay. Always a wise choice when dealing with gull topics. You know, I can ask questions all day, but whether the answers are going to be forthcoming is you know, a little more questionable. Okay, so here's another first winter bird. This looks like this one is maybe a little farther along. It's got more feather wear on the you know, tertials here and the wing feathers. You can see a little bit of that mantle shade coming in. Am I correct to say that's like that light gray I'm starting to see up here?
Yeah, the darker feathers are lighter gray. Yeah, this is so well worn. It's got to be a spring bird, I believe. And here the bill shape is different. You've got it's a little bit more elongated and a little bit more bulbous toward the tip, and that's a typical glaucous-wing gull bill shape.
And confirming it has a date at the bottom, says April 19th in Oregon. So there you go. Yeah, you're correctly aging that gull based on its feather wear. All right, so your second winter. So, you know, moving closer to the adult pattern, but still, again, it's got those, you know, those primaries that are basically the same color as the coverts. Right? It's, you know, I mean, again, I'm used to looking at Western gulls, and you know, I would never see primaries that light. They're always much darker on the Western gull. Non-breeding adult, pretty striking bird. So they have this variable smudging on the head, right? Which the Western gull, at least in an adult bird, would tend not to have, right? Even in the winter, the Western gull adult does not have, you know, it has a pretty white head without a lot of smudging. Would you say that's correct, Mark?
It's variable, but I think generally, yeah, that's the trend.
Okay, so there's and you know, very light mantle shade. Again, if you think about a Western gull's mantle shade and just mentally put this bird next to it, you're like, wow, that's a very light colored mantle on that bird.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and try and keep my momentum. Move on from glaucous-winged to, okay.
Yep.
To this bird. Yeah, Brody, what do you have to say?
It looks like the glaucous-winged, they have a black on their bill, which I think the Western don't have really.
So it's in a non-breeding bird, right? They can have some black, and I think that's true in both Western and glaucous-winged. Is that right, Mark?
Oh.
It's the breeding plumage, you know, in the spring and summer months when they get that really clean yellow bill with just the red red spot on it. But it's variable, right? There's a lot of individual variation. And certainly if the bird is younger, if it's a, second or a third year bird, it's going to have a lot of, could potentially have a lot of black on the bill. It's something that they tend to lose over time, but then in the winter, they might still have a little bit of it.
So the last picture we looked at, the bill didn't really look yellow to me. It looks sort of pinkish.
Okay. I mean, again, there's individual variation, and
Okay.
When I have looked at several thousand more gulls, I'll have looked at a small fraction of what the ones Mark has looked at, and we can pester him and say, what is the actual full range of bill color in an adult glaucous-winged gull? But yeah, go study them, go look at them. They look like they look. That's why you have multiple characteristics to look at. So you can say, okay, I've got 6 or 7 different clues here, and if I weigh them all together, maybe this one is a little bit weird in this bird, but these other 6, tell me.
It might be worth mentioning that bill size, I think, varies by among the larger gulls. Bill size varies between the genders, and so you may have males that have particularly massive bills within a species, and females have more, more gently shaped bill and modestly sized bill. So, if this is a pure glaucous-winged gull, I'd have to guess that this is a female, and it would be really nothing.
The bill. Yeah.
Yes. But that gender difference in bill size and shape is really pretty pronounced on herring gulls. And it's less well discussed among the other gulls. But I think it's also a factor in our Thayer's gull, and now Iceland gull, that most of the birds we identify are females, because it's safer to identify the birds with the smaller bill sizes than it is the confusing ones with the larger bill sizes. So bill size and shape may be explained by gender-based differences.
Interesting. Which, is really hard to know which one you're looking at unless you see a pair on a nest, right? And you can actually then tell, oh, there's one with a big bill and one with a small bill. I know which is the male and which is the female. But if they're just out walking around, on a beach somewhere, it's hard to know. You can't grab them and say, hey, excuse me, are you a male gull or a female gull? All right, so this is the one that so I even put a question mark on this one. So this is where I went from the slightly more exotic 6 to, or slightly more exotic 5 species to make it a 6th bird that's not a species, it's a hybrid. But I realized that we've got, compared to some of the other birds we're talking about in this meeting, this one is more numerous than those. This is one that I, come across a fair amount. And certainly as I work on learning my gulls and I start posting these photos to eBird just labeled gull species, and I send out emails to Mark and others and say, what do I have here? It's like a lot of the time when I've been confused, it's because what I have here is a hybrid, is probably a Western glaucous-winged hybrid or some other hybrid. But that's what this bird, I believe, is, but again with a question mark.
I think I'd agree with you. It's worthwhile noticing that the primaries are in molt. So the longer primaries are older and faded.
Oh, yeah.
And you see fresh ones, I
here.
think those may be inner primaries there, are new, fresh, and incoming. So those are the ones to read, that are more reliable, those fresh ones. But I think you're probably right. We're looking at a hybrid. Intergrade between Western and glaucous-winged gull, whether it's a first generation intergrade or a back cross of a purebred with a hybrid, or whether it's a cross of 2 hybrids. These are totally unknowns and impossible to speculate about. Yeah.
But the things that, okay, so just to kind of help me put it in that category of a glaucous-winged Western hybrid, it's the right size and shape structure-wise for, say, a Western gull. And it certainly is, I would look at that beak and say, yeah, that looks like a Western gull beak. The shade, all this shading on the head, like it's clearly an adult gull. It's got the white tips on the primaries, so it's a full-on adult gull. But it's got all this sort of gray shading on the head and neck, which I would not expect in an adult Western gull, but is a characteristic of a non-breeding adult glaucous-winged gull. Is that right?
I guess
I mean, there's, yeah. And then the mantle, you know, it's definitely dark. I think that's definitely darker than what I'd expect in a Glaucous-Winged Gull, but it's arguably lighter than what I'd expect in a Western Gull. I mean, you can't really tell with lighting in an individual photo, but.
Well, here's the problem with Western gulls is we have two different kinds of Western gulls. We have northern Western gulls and southern Western gulls, and we're at the border between these two forms. So the southern gulls are more black-backed, and the further north we get, the more they become either intergrades or, well, if we're talking pure Western gulls, they tend toward being having a paler mantle.
Okay.
So on this bird, you know it's not a glaucous wing, a full glaucous wing because of the dark primaries.
Yeah.
Can you say that this is not a northern Western gull? Well, I think you're right about this head pattern, this speckling on the head being something introduced by glaucous wing. But other than that, I don't think you can say for sure that this is not a pure northern Western gull.
Okay.
The bill looks a little bit more glaucous wing. You know, it's a little bit more larger gonadial angle. And look at this long nasal nostril.
Okay.
Again, if we get to Western gull, you know, let's take a look at that and see if this really holds true, this long nostril thing.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And so I can't click through to an All About Birds page about this hybrid because they don't have, you know, the species pages they have for recognized species. But I can go to photos in eBird from Santa Barbara County that have been identified as Western glaucous-winged hybrids. And maybe we could just like step through a few of those. And, you know, you're going to get a mix of ages here, but these are birds that were in Santa Barbara County and were photographed, and somebody at some level believed they were a Western glaucous-winged hybrid with some degree of certainty, at least that they're labeled that way. Yeah. So this is like, I guess, a good example. It's, you know, I mean, when I first would look at this bird, I would think, oh, I'm looking at a, you know, an immature Western gull, except the mantle shade coming in is really too pale. And that gray is grayer than I would expect with Western gull. Are the primaries lighter than they should be for maybe a Western gull immature? I mean, what do you think, Mark, about that feature?
The telltale thing is the tail color and the primaries color. That can't be a pure Western, and that can't be a pure glaucous winged. So immediately you're stuck with this idea of a hybrid. But then you've got this very gentle and even mottling in the greater secondary coverts and the median secondary coverts.
So in this area.
And that is never the pattern you'll see in a Western gull. And the mantle,
so that's more of a glaucous-winged.
And the mantle, of course, is much paler than a Western gull would show. So yeah, you're pretty much locked into hybrid or a back cross with a intergrade glaucous wing or something like that, some combination of hybrid.
All right, I'm gonna move on to another. So here, this is a photo by Glenn Kincaid of an adult. And, you know, when we were talking about the glaucous-winged bill shape, is this like this sort of this elongated glaucous-wing type beak?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, and it's just, so the only thing really keeping this from being a glaucous wing then is these primaries are too dark? Would you say
that's a little bit too dark?
Yeah.
Mantle might be slightly too dark also.
On this bird, yeah. Okay, here's another one, also from Glenn Kincaid. So an immature bird, you know, again with that sort of problematic mantle shade on what otherwise, and I guess somewhat lighter tail and primaries on what otherwise might be a perfectly respectable immature Western gull.
Yeah.
There's a good comparison if you want to, you know, with presumably a Western gull here and then a hybrid Western glaucous wing behind it.
This is a good example of a southern Western gull on the left. Okay. That dark black mantle is typical of birds that breed on the Channel Islands and south of here.
Excellent. Okay, well, I mean, I could scroll through these photos all day. It would be fascinating, but I'm gonna go back to the presentation slides and move on to the next species, which is reassuringly one that I feel more comfortable I could actually identify in the field. So this is a herring gull. And so the things that jump out at me about the herring gull, I guess, you know, the light eye, the light iris, you know, and the bill shape, it's kind of elongated. You know, it's not a big swollen tip like a Western gull would have, more sort of parallel sided. Relatively light mantle. You know, this bird's sort of standing at an angle, so it's hard, it's not in perfect profile, so maybe it's harder to assess the structure. And my understanding too is that herring gulls actually have a pretty variable structure. Like some of them are pretty elongated and some of them are more compact. Anyway, let's look at official herring gulls over at the All About Birds page. Here is their range. You know, they are all across North America. We get them in the winter months. Again, in relatively small numbers, right? I'm used to seeing 1s or 2s at the beach. I know you get them, I know you do a lot of birding at Lake Kachuma, and you seem to get herring gulls there a lot in the winter. Is that true, that they tend to be inland?
Regular, you know, everything is diminished in the last 15, 20 years at Kachuma, including the gulls, but they still generally get 1 or 2 herring gulls there in the winter.
Okay. And, you know, this is like, these gulls are much more numerous in the eastern part of the country, right? This is sort of the big gull, like the way we have Western gulls, you know, all over a parking lot going after your French fries. In the east, it's herring gulls. I mean, they have other species too, but herring gulls are like the big white-headed gull in the east. Is that the big common white-headed gull? I don't have any direct experience of that much bird watching in the east, but all right, let's look at their actual, some photos. Start with and again, would we get a juvenile herring gull out here? I mean, they're not breeding.
Yeah, we can get first winter herring gulls that look a lot like this.
Okay, cool. So, you know, I would be challenged looking at a bird like this to not misidentify it as a juvenile Western gull. Like this bird's beak is is awfully small, I would think, for a Western gull, and that maybe would tip me off. I've heard a lot of discussed about the sort of strong kind of checkerboard pattern on the greater coverts and median coverts that the herring gulls have, that kind of strong, kind of cross-hatched look, like almost like a grid pattern here. I'm not sure I can recognize that. Like I look for it and I see it in other birds that are not herring gulls, so I'm not sure that I'm really keen in on the right characteristics there. Are there things about this bird, Mark, that would jump out at you and say, oh, you're looking at a juvenile herring gull?
Yeah, I think this pattern of secondary coverts, the median and the greater secondary coverts, that uniform pattern that really is quite attractive, to use a subjective term, is very different than the messy situation that you see in Western gull. So that evens fringing with dark centers of the feathers with dark centers and even fringing in a consistent pattern throughout the greater and median secondary coverts is pretty good feature for herring gull. Okay. You know, Thayer's gull, Iceland gull can also show this, and Glaucous-Winged Gull can show that a little bit, but this size of the bird, this smaller bill size, notice the round head on this bird. This suggests a female head shape to me. So yeah, that looks like a pretty good herring gull with the dark primaries.
Okay, I'm gonna skip the video. So here's they say a second winter bird. So you can start to see its mantle coming in. It's a very light mantle color. It's got the light iris already. This bird overall is just very light. You know, to me at least, it looks very light. Yeah.
Yeah, just looking at the mantle color, ring-billed gull mantle and herring gull, I don't bother to differentiate those. To me, they're almost the same. Yeah. And so structure then becomes the critical difference. And if you've got other clues like the pale iris, then you're in much better shape. This bird is already showing pinkish legs, even though it's a second year, I guess it's a second winter bird. And that also distinguishes it from what a ring-billed gull would be at this age.
And I mean, it should be, I mean, if it's around other gulls of known type, you know, if it's around a Western gull and it's close in size to a Western gull, I'm going to know, okay, that's not a ring-billed gull. That's way too big.
Yeah.
Here it is, getting a little older. And I don't know if this is just me picking this out from a few birds I've seen, but this feature where it's got the really white iris and then the sort of dark smudging around the eye.
Yeah.
I see that as a real herring gull thing. Like when I've seen that on herring gulls, and it really jumps out at me. Is that a reliable characteristic to kind of lead you in the herring gull direction?
Mew Gull can show that also.
Okay.
But you've got the remnants of this nice speckling on the secondary coverts, and so that, and then the pale mantle coming in with the very dark primaries and the light iris. That tells you.
And the bill shape, you know, I wouldn't like that. I mean, I'm used to, again, I've looked at a lot of Western gull bills, and that to me is clearly, you know, sort of less heavy, more parallel sided.
Yeah.
So third winter bird, almost an adult. There's a non-breeding adult.
Now that looks like a male bird. I hate to go into this gender thing, but that bill size and kind of fiercer look looks to me more like a male herring gull.
Yeah, and just like and sort of that sort of tall neck, just kind of that sort of big, powerful looking bird in a way.
Yeah.
Breeding adult. Which again, I don't. Would you expect to see a breeding plumage herring gull around here? Is that something you've encountered?
The late winter birds are, you know, reasonably. Some of them are reasonably close to a breeding plumage bird.
Okay. Let me go on. So here, this is. I have a real hard time with this species. I just have a really hard time identifying them. I only know this is a Thayer's gull because the only time I have seen and reported a Thayer's gull that I felt confident about was because somebody else reported there is a Thayer's gull at, you know, this park in Santa Barbara, and I went there and the bird was there and I photographed it and I put it in my eBird list and said, okay, all you people who know your gulls, is this the Thayer's gull that we're talking about? I said, yeah, that's the bird. So I have it on good authority that this photo I took is a Thayer's gull, but I would have a hard time, you know, recognizing it, differentiating it from other gulls.
Well, again, we can be a little bit more confident because, in my opinion, that's a female gull. And females show the more gentle, the smaller, more diminutive bill, the more gently rounded head. And we like to say that those are good features of Thayer's gull. Not very many of us say that it's a feature of female Thayer's gull. So, but in my opinion, that's what's going on there. There are probably many male Iceland Thayer's gulls that go unidentified as such.
And what is it that they're likely to be confused with around here?
That picture that you had of the herring gull, the male herring gull, a little bit earlier, I think that you'll have some birds that have a more robust bill in that direction.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click through to the All About Birds page just so we can step through there. And the range is kind of confusing because they're mixing together the sort of the subspecies. I forget what the actual subspecies names are, but there's the Iceland gull, and there's the Thayer's subspecies that has been lumped with the Iceland gull. You know, so I think those are both being shown here on the range map. So I'm not sure exactly which part of this map refers to the Thayer's population. But the point is, these wintering birds along the California coast are the Thayer's subspecies. Typically, that's what we're seeing. So Mark dropped off on my thumbnails. Is he still in the meeting? Can someone confirm that for me? You're still here, Mark?
Yep.
Okay, great. And I will be able to continue to pester you, which is good. So let me look at some of these photos. And this is confusing too because they've mixed the two subspecies together. So we're only going to be paying attention to the the Thayers. So here's a first winter Thayer's gull. Mark, can I, is there things about this bird that jump out at you and say Thayers?
Well, it's got that pattern on the greater and median secondary coverts that speaks of Thayers nicely, that even modeling, which is similar to what herring gull will show. But this has a more diminutive bill, a rounder head, and it has on the primaries tips this white little fringe. And,
oh yes, this little edge, right? Just the very edge of the primary tips there that's white.
Yep. And that is supposedly a pretty good indication of Iceland Thayer's gull in this plumage.
Here's I guess a slightly older gull. Oh, yeah, it's the wrong species. We go on to the Thayers, the wrong subspecies, right? So here's a non-breeding adult. I mean, again, I've only seen the one bird, so I don't have any idea of the range of variation. This one seems to have a lot of smudging going on its head and neck that I'm not familiar with. This actually looks pretty similar to that bird that I had the photo of earlier. Okay, well, I'm just gonna jump on so we can get to the last of the slightly more exotic 6. And finally, it's a bird that I feel very comfortable identifying. It has, unique characteristics that really make it stand out. This is a Bonaparte's gull, a winter plumage Bonaparte's gull. And it's very small. Like, is the Bonaparte's the smallest gull that we're regularly getting here in Santa Barbara County?
Of our regular gulls, and it's much less regular than it used to be. 10, 20 years ago, Bonaparte's gulls came in very large numbers, and there's been a substantial drop off in that. Lehman's book discusses that pretty nicely.
Yeah, Paul Lehman's Birds of Santa Barbara County, which I mention in most meetings, definitely worth downloading and checking because it answers all these questions in great detail. So here's its range map for the Bonaparte's gull. So it's, migrates across the whole country. In the winter months, we have it along the coast, and it's in the southern part of the rest of the country. And then it breeds relatively far north across the northern Canada and Alaska. And it is quite small.
I see something that even in the silhouette you could see if you had a silhouette.
Which is what?
The beak. It's really, really thin and long.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's good that you're keying in on that beak structure, because that will, as Mark was saying, as I think I was trying to get at in the last meeting, the variety of plumage variations can really get very confusing. So if you focus on the structure, and including the structure of the beak, the size and shape, that will definitely help simplify things for you. But here's our juvenile Bonaparte's gull. So a very young gull.
I've never seen one of those.
Yeah, I don't think I have either, with that real brownish kind of juvenile look. And here it is in the first winter. And this photo of it in flight kind of shows you it's got this sort of cool M pattern that you get on the upper surface of the wings when it's flying, where you've got these dark outer primaries and then this dark bar across the inner part of the wing. Let's see, so I'll try and go in order again, not make it more confusing than it has to be. So here's a first winter bird, and then the non-breeding adult. So it's just a very small gull with this dark, thin beak, and sort of a medium mantle shade, I guess. Although, again, I don't think I've ever gotten as far as really consulting mantle shade when I've seen a Bonaparte's gull, because it's so distinctive looking. It's like, oh yeah, Bonaparte's gull. But it's also possible that I've mixed in some other more exotic small gull and failed to recognize that it's not a Bonaparte's gull. So it'd be good to run through all the characteristics and really check it out. And there's the breeding adult, which I don't think I have ever seen, but is certainly quite spectacular looking. But again, this is the appearance we're much more likely to see in the non-breeding birds we get here. Okay, so that is it for the 6 different birds, I keep wanting to say species, the 5 species plus 1 hybrid that that round out the group we're talking about today. What I have now is just a bunch of photos that I've taken of gulls at the beach with, you know, some of them I think are in that, in fact, all of them I think include at least one bird that is in that group of 6. But I'm very happy that Mark is here to help me kind of zero in on that and be more authoritative and not just me kind of guessing. So I encourage those of you who've been doing a very good job of staying muted, go ahead and unmute and I'll be happy to get input on people. You're at the beach, you're looking through your binoculars at this group of gulls. What do you think you have here? Someone volunteer, someone other than Mark, and we'll treat you as the ultimate judge, Mark. We'll get to you at the end and see who's right and who's wrong, or at least who is more authoritatively endorsed by your opinion.
I think the one in the front, like the basic one that you can really see, might be a Glaucous-Winged Gull.
Okay, and what leads you to say that?
The really light mantle shade, but what throws me off is the dark primary, the dark extension of the wing.
The dark primaries, yeah. The tips of the primaries are too dark. In a glaucous-wing, those should really be the same shade as the mantle.
Yeah.
So
I'm not really sure.
Okay. What about some of the other birds? It's good to identify the common ones because again, they'll give you your yardstick. So what do you think?
I see a Heermann's gull in the corner.
Down here?
Yeah,
and actually one up here too.
Corner.
Yeah, and another one over. We've got Heermanns all around the edges. We've got some Heermanns scattered in there. How about these white-headed gulls? What do you think? Like this one here? Do you have an idea what that is?
That one might be a herring, I think.
So actually, I'm leaning towards herring for this one in the center. It's light iris. This one in the back, I'm thinking that's a California gull. And I think most of the white-headed gulls in this picture are probably California gulls. Like I think this one and this one, just that bill pattern looks kind of California gull and the mantle shade. I mean, it's hard to tell with the lighting. But what I think we have here is a herring gull in the center and then a bunch of California gulls and some Heermann's gulls that you pointed out.
What's the date of the photo, John?
What's that?
The date of this photo?
I apologize. I did not include the dates and I should have. And that's going to be a problem all through here because I didn't include that for any of them. And I don't remember. I mean, I went back through, 3 years of gull photos and just picked out the ones I thought were interesting. I mean, I could find out and update it, but I can't do it in real time in the meeting, I don't think, without taking too much time.
Well, one feature you haven't talked about much is in the bird that's due north, directly above the upper back of the herring gull.
So this
bird? Yes, that one. Notice the nape has these rivulets, kind of smudgy rivulets on the nape. And it kind of looks like it might have a dark iris, although I'm not certain of that. It sort of looks like it might be light too, in between. But the bill looks a little bit like Mew Gull. Anyway, the ring-billed gull of second winter or beyond, or older, can be distinguished from the ring-billed gull of second winter and older by that nape smudging. It's a smudged bunch of rivulets running down the back of the neck in a Mew Gull, and it's simply spots, streaks, thin streaks on the nape of a ring-billed gull.
Cool. So, and again, you're getting into like the identification of the bird that you can only see a little piece of here.
Yeah. And I'm probably wrong because that iris is a little bit too dark for Mew Gull.
Okay, but how do you feel about this bird in the center? I think I reported this as a herring gull.
Yeah, I like that.
You like that? You like that ID?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to another photo because we've got several. Okay, so here's a fun photo. It gives you a nice size comparison between these two species.
The Mew Gull on the bottom, I think, maybe. And on the top, I'm sort of going for Western.
I would agree on both of those. Mark, do you have?
Yep.
You agree too? Okay, so yeah, Mew Gull. Nice little tiny beak.
You know why? Go ahead, John.
What's that?
Go ahead and explain why.
Why the Mew Gull? Well, so it's very small. It's got that small thin beak. It's got a very rounded head, right? Which is a Mew Gull feature, right? This very rounded head that it has. You know, size-wise compared to the Western gull, it's just tiny. You know, a ring-billed gull, I would think, would have a noticeably larger beak. And if this is an adult, I would expect it to have, you know, a ring-billed pattern with the dark ring on the yellow beak. Yeah, am I missing something important there, Mark?
No.
Okay, let's move on. All right, so what do we think we have here, or what do we recognize about this bird here that would be sort of interesting? You know, it's hard when it's just the one bird with nothing else around it in the photo. My belief is this bird is, you know, is big, that it's roughly Western gull sized. That there are Western gulls.
I was sort of thinking Glaucous-Winged Gull.
So I think that's what I was thinking when I saw this bird, but I'm also very happy to have Mark here to ask, you know, what do you think we're looking at with this bird?
Yeah, I'd have to go with Glaucous-Winged also. I think this even pattern on the greater and lesser median secondary coverts is so fine, so refined, so clean. And the pale primaries are really suggest strongly Glaucous-Winged.
So the fact that there's not a lot of contrast going on in these coverts, that is kind of this muted but very regular pattern. Is that what you're talking about with the Glaucous-Winged coverts?
Yeah. And those feathers on the mantle that are starting to come in are clearly pale as the primaries.
And presumably this is a first year bird, is that right? This is a very young bird. Okay, let's look at another photo. So a very bad photo because it's all out of focus and fuzzy, but.
I think they're two Mew Gulls.
I would agree. And what about the one that you can sort of see part of in the upper left? Do you have any guess on that?
A Western Gull maybe? Or yeah, I'm sort of leaning toward Western.
Well, it's certainly bigger than the Mew Gulls. I would call your attention to the foot and leg color. So in an adult Western Gull, that should be sort of pinker, right? And this is more kind of greenish.
And the smudging I'm sort of seeing, which is leading me to a California Gull.
Yeah, I think it's a California Gull too.
2 Mews in the California.
Yes. All right, we've achieved consensus. Mark, do you agree?
This shows that smudging on the nape of Mew Gull also.
Oh yeah, here.
Yeah. And that would be streaking on a ring-billed gull of this same age.
Right. So my video panel is obscuring that bird there. I'll move it. Okay. So I'll give you a hint. This out of focus bird is one of our big four. Someone want to hazard a guess about which of the big four this is down at the bottom?
California Gull.
I would agree. Yeah.
And then in the back, I think it's a Western.
So it's the right size, and the bill is certainly big and heavy with a nice gonidial angle like a Western would have. But I call your attention to the primaries. Yeah, were you saying something, Tom?
How about a Glaucous?
So I would think maybe a Glaucous-Winged. I mean, Glaucous is a different species that we're not even talking about tonight. But I'm curious what Mark thinks. Because there was a period of time, this goes back a year or two ago, where I really wanted to add a Glaucous-Winged gull to my year list. So I was taking all these photos of all these candidates, and I thought, oh, this is a Glaucous-Winged gull for sure. And you know, most of the time, what ended up happening is people said, oh, well, you've got a hybrid there probably. There's these problematic characteristics for calling that a pure Glaucous-Winged gull, which was very educational, if somewhat disappointing in the moment. Mark, I'm curious, what do you think? You know, from the limited, you know,
Glaucous-Winged gull, and if it was a glaucous gull of this age, it would have a pale base of the mandible and a sharp black tip. Well delineated black tip, and that's a good feature for glaucous gull. So that's why this is not that. And this is big and bulky with the even patterning on the secondary coverts and the pale tail, which, you know, can look a lot like Thayer's gull tail. And so by size and bill bulk, that's got to be a Glaucous-Winged Gull.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear. So again, a poor photo, very grainy, but I liked that it showed sort of the non-breeding look that I've learned for this species. Anyone want to guess? I mean, I've already kind of hinted, but.
I think it's a Mew Gull that you can see pretty much all of it, and then the other two I think are Western.
Yeah, I think I would certainly agree. This one is a Western.
And
this
then the
one
back is a California. I just looked at its legs.
Yeah, the fact you can see a little bit of, if that's its leg, then I think that would help push me towards California on this back gull. It's, you know, it's funny because in these photos, you know, I mean, it's a different challenge. When you're out there at the beach, you can wait till it pulls its head out or moves around. Or, you know, with a photo, you get a really good long look, but it also, that's the only look you get. You can't wait and see it from a different angle or see it in better light as it repositions. But yeah, so do you see any problems with those IDs, Mark?
No, but I'd noticed the bill on this Western gull, the lower left one. It's really quite a distinctly featured gull that is not billed, that is not typical of Western gull. Notice how bulbous that tip is with a large gonadial angle. That's not quite, you know, there could be a photo distortion going on there, but you know, I think that's a Western gull, but it's an atypical bill for a Western gull. Too big, too slender at the base, too fat at the tip.
Okay, good. All right, so how about this group? So I'm seeing 3 species here, I think, across these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals. And I'm guessing on some of the ones I can't see too well.
California in the very back, I think. Yeah.
I agree.
2 Mew Gulls, a little closer.
So you think this one is a Mew Gull?
Gull and a ring build. A Mew and a ring build.
Think this is a ring build?
Yes.
So I'm not sure it's apparent in your view. In my view, I think I'm seeing a little bit of red right here on this bird's beak.
Yes.
Which makes me think it's maybe a California gull, because I wouldn't think a ring-billed gull would have any red there.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's subtle, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's a photo artifact. You know, this is not a great photo in terms of the lighting.
And then I see a Heermans that you can barely see the head of.
Yeah, that's what I thought this was too. And then I'm assuming these are Californias, but you can barely see them, so who knows what they are. And this one, yeah, I don't know. It's a gull. Yeah, that I'm not too sure. All right, I'm going to keep zipping along. Oh, so this one I was very happy about. This bird in particular, I know when this photo was taken, because this was the afternoon of the last Carpinteria Christmas count when it got super windy, and you know we weren't getting anything, and it was just kind of sad. And I said, well, and I went down to the beach, and in the mouth of Carpinteria Creek there was this one bird, just sitting there in the midst of the Western gulls and the California gulls. That I felt very good about, because I felt like, oh, this is a species we don't have yet on the count, and so we got this species on the count. But light mantle, light iris, this kind of long beak. So this is a herring gull, I assume, or I certainly hope, because that's how we submitted it for the count. But something that I've read about in herring gulls too, that I sometimes think I'm seeing, and sometimes I'm not real sure about, is this. The head is elongated, like they call it a pulled taffy kind of look, where it looks like someone has taken the beak and pulled it, and the head is kind of this long, elongated shape. I'm curious, Mark, if you think that's a feature to look for in terms of herring gulls, or is that just like an individual variation kind of thing that is going to be pretty unreliable?
The question was about the bill?
Well, about the head shape, about the idea that herring gulls have an elongated head.
Male herring gulls have that more fierce, longer head, longer bill shape. I think that's a male herring gull.
Cool. Let's see what else. I just really like the Mew Gulls. I have a lot of pictures in here of Mew Gulls. I think because I figured out how to identify them, you know, from their sort of characteristic structure, and just they're distinctive enough looking that, you know, you can recognize them. It's not too ambiguous. And so once I saw that, I got very excited whenever they were around and started snapping lots of, you know, poor quality photos of them. So there's a lot of those photos in here. But I think that's what we have here, right? And it shows that kind of smudging on the nape that you were talking about too, Mark. On these, and then I assume this is a California gull in the center. It's kind of interesting that at least in this photo, the mantle shade looks pretty much identical from this with this bird and this bird.
Yeah.
But that could be lighting and, you know,
Yeah.
bad photo. Okay, this is just a silly question. What do you think this bird is? Is this another California? Is it a Mew Gull?
Hard to know, but I'd guess California.
Yeah. All right, this was on, I think this is on the railing of the Goleta Pier at that, you know, the Goleta Beach Park, is that what it's called? Where the yellow-crowned night herons are these days. There's that pier you can walk out on, and this bird was perched on the railing with a bunch of Western gulls. Any guesses on what I thought it was?
Herring gull.
That is correct. I thought it was a herring gull. You know, light mantle, really light iris. It's, oh, this bird's certainly a little thinner bodied than this presumed Western gull behind it, but it's about the same size. You know, it's a pretty big gull. All right, let's see. Oh yeah, this is fun. So here is a fun size comparison.
A Bonaparte to California.
I would agree. Yeah, I think that's what this is. This Bonaparte's, you know, I was going to say I thought it had an injured leg, but I think it's just the photo. I think there actually is a second leg here. It just kind of disappears against the sand because of the poor image quality. This was also at a Goleta Beach Park. I was excited because I was trying to get, you know, a Bonaparte skull for my county year list in eBird, and there was one reported from Ocean Beach Park, from Goleta Beach Park. So I went running out there to see this, and it was there, so I was excited. So, Bonaparte skull. I don't even remember where I took this photo. I would have to go back and find it. This might be the mouth of Carpinteria Creek. So I think this bird in the back is a Western gull. I'm curious what our expert analysis from Mark thinks about this bird in the foreground, because I don't even remember what I thought it was. I think I've added it as gull species and, you know, threw myself on the mercy of the reviewers.
What do other people think?
I'm sort of thinking a Western in the back and maybe a California in the front. I'm not really sure though because of the pink legs.
Glaucous-Winged.
Might be a Glaucous-Winged gull. The head shape sort of says it's malish. I'd venture a guess that this is a possible Iceland Thayer's gull. It's got the white tips to the primaries, and the bill is sort of on the larger side of small. It's not a rounded head, which doesn't mean it's not a Thayer's Iceland gull, but that it may be a male Thayer's Iceland gull. I'm just speculating here because it could be a Glaucous-Winged also, but it just doesn't look like it has that body size. It looks like it's in the size range of a Thayer's gull.
So a little smaller than what you'd expect with a Glaucous-Winged gull, is that right?
Yeah.
Neat. Yeah, and you know, as I think we've discussed in the previous gull meeting, and as in that David Sibley quote that I like to use when we talk about gulls, you know, it's very challenging, and with some individual birds, you can get to a point of it being just, well, it looks like it's got, you know, a certain amount of this and a certain amount of that, and it's sort of subjective and it's sort of, you know, probabilistic. It's like, well, it's probably this. it's mostly this, or it's leaning towards this. So.
Another thing that you can look at, and I wouldn't take this very far, I certainly wouldn't take it to the bank, is the leg color is a little bit more on the maroon side. And so when you're looking at more adultish, older Thayer's gulls, the leg color is kind of a deep and richer maroon red, or maroon pink. And this, you know, sort of looks like it's tending in that direction, but that's really speculative. I wouldn't go even in the bank parking lot with that.
You know, I think with gulls, one of the things I've really had to come to grips with and sort of reconcile myself to is I'm not necessarily going to be able to get to a species identification every time. You know, there are going to be individuals that are just fascinating, unique individuals, and you know who exactly their parents were, or you know what exactly their. I mean, there are people expert enough to get much farther along that path than I can. But at least where I am, you know, sometimes I just take the first few steps down that path. I'm like, well, it's a very interesting gull. I can talk about things it's not, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Let's see, what did I like here? Oh, so yeah, I guess this individual is the one that I was excited about when I took this photo, but they're all great birds. So, Brody, do you have any guesses? You're a good guesser.
Heermann's in the back.
Yep.
I'm not really sure what that one in its juvenile stages or.
This one?
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that one. The one
Welcome to my world, yes.
The one in the front is California, I think, and then the one next to it, maybe a ring-billed or California. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think this one is a slightly younger California gull. Like it looks like maybe I'm looking at black tail feathers there, which would maybe make it, you know, not quite, and it's sort of a sub-adult, right? Maybe an older, immature California gull that isn't fully adult yet. I'd be interested in your views on that, Mark, as well as your views on this bird here.
Well, the size of the immature of the first winter bird is so, you know, big and robust. I'm tempted to think Glaucous-Winged Gull, and nothing else I see about it is inconsistent with Glaucous-Winged Gull.
And certainly, like the primary tips being the same color as the you know coverts is a good Glaucous-Winged characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I agree about your assessment of the California gulls.
Okay. All right. I took this one just the other day, I think. This was like from a week or two ago.
Ooh, what are you doing?
This one is one I put in as gull species, and you know, I thought maybe Western Glaucous-Winged hybrid, but I have no strong position on this. It is interesting to see the aging of the feathers. Like it's got these really old primaries that are all faded and brown, and then it's got some new ones coming in.
Yeah.
You know, the mantle certainly looks too light for a Western gull.
It's a funny one.
Yeah.
I think it's a Glaucous-Winged Western hybrid, if I had to guess.
Okay. Another very poor photo of a very cool gull.
Bonaparte skull.
Yeah, cute little Bonaparte skull. And then this is the immature Bonaparte skull, right? This is the young Bonaparte skull wing pattern. In the adult, it has like this light leading edge of the primary. It's like this white, kind of this narrow white triangle on the leading edge of the outer primaries. But otherwise has this strong pattern, which again, if you could see more of the upper surface of the wings, sort of makes a big M of dark feathers. So I think I actually got feedback from you, Mark, about this bird when I posted this to eBird. So this is from the outing I took a couple weeks ago up to, or a week ago, up to the Santa Maria River estuary and walking the beach south from there. And, you know, so this bird I thought was really interesting. I was thinking this showed characteristics of, you know, Western / Glaucous-Winged hybrid. But you were questioning, I think, or at least at some point you had questioned this, Mark. But you were also, I think you said this was based on seeing a little tiny picture on your phone or something. Like you weren't looking at a very good version of the image I'd uploaded. I'm curious what your opinion of this bird is.
I don't know. I like straight Western gull on that.
Really? So even so, it's an adult and it's got a fair amount of smudging on the head. Is that, you know, that's not enough to pull you off that position?
You know, like it could be a hybrid gull that has back crossed to a Western gull. So you might have that influence slipping in from a previous hybridization event.
And, you know, at the time I was really struck, well, that this was a lighter mantle than this bird, this out of focus bird in the back that I assume is a Western, you know, an immature Western. But then, you know, you've been talking now about, well, there are these different populations of Western gulls, right? There is, you know, not just one mantle shade that Western gulls have.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, this lower left one could easily be a northern Western gull, but it could also have some hybridization in it also. The bill is pretty big and robust, so.
All right. I want to call this a Glaucous-Winged Gull, a first-year Glaucous-Winged Gull, but I, you know, it's very faded, right? I wish I'd put the dates on here. This is a relatively, these feathers look old and pretty worn, so it's maybe fairly late in the winter or into the spring. I don't know. I'm curious what your opinions on this bird are, Mark.
The wings are so faded that I wouldn't trust a lot of information from it.
Okay.
So, but you know, the bill looks very large, hefty. It does look consistent with Glaucous-Winged Gull.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes there's only so much you can say. This was a bird from a few weeks ago down on the beach at Carpinteria. Again, I was thinking Glaucous-Winged Western hybrid, but you know, I'm learning more about the range of mantle shades in Western gulls. So I'm curious what you think of this bird, Mark.
It's fairly advanced mantle and primaries, but it's fairly immature bill. And that's kind of interesting. And then it's got a little bit of palishness to the iris. So I'm not sure what that is.
Cool.
I don't really think I'd like to put a name on that.
All right, so this is sort of a ringer. This is the same individual bird that I showed earlier for this species, because it's the only individual of this bird that I have any photos of, so I threw it in here. But here actually is a trick question. What is this species in the lower right-hand corner?
Mallard.
It's a mallard, yes, good job.
I was gonna say that I was gonna sort of guess that was maybe Mew Gull. I'm not really sure, but then I was also gonna say there was a mallard in the back.
Ah, well, you were definitely right on the mallard. For a Mew Gull, the beak is really too big, right? The Mew Gull beak would be smaller. And this, in fact, is the same individual bird that I showed earlier for Thayer's gull. This is the Thayer's subspecies of the Iceland gull. At least that's what was reported to me, and I ran out and took photos of that bird, and so I'm relying on others to identify that. But I do notice what you were talking about with the leg color, Mark. Like these really are kind of, there's a real reddish kind of tone to those pink legs.
Yeah, a deeper maroon kind of color.
Yeah. Neat. I think I'm almost done. Yeah, I don't know what this bird is. I'm curious what you think this bird is, Mark.
We didn't see this before, huh?
I don't think we saw this actual photo. We may have seen this bird. I mixed this stuff all together and didn't really keep good track of what I was throwing together. Apologize for not being more strict in my procedure.
You know, it's a hybrid. It's a hybrid.
Yeah.
I mean, there's another hybrid combination that's possible, but I'm not very good at distinguishing that. What is it? Herring, glaucous-wing? I forget what it is.
Yeah, they have a little bit of overlap with their breeding range, right, where they can actually hybridize.
Yeah. But I think this is just, can be explained by Glaucous-Winged Western hybridization.
Yeah. So like a glaucous-winged mantle shade and a, Western-ish, darker primaries. And
Yeah.
cool. Opinions on this one? Is this like a first-year glaucous-winged or?
Yeah, I think I'd go with that. Yeah.
It is interesting. You can, to look at this pattern on the coverts and just trying to figure out what I'm seeing there.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I think, I'm not sure if this is the last one. This is close to the end.
I think there's a Bonaparte's in the back. Maybe a herring gull that's just doing a weird thing, like side.
This, you're saying the bird on the left or the bird on the right?
Yeah, the one that you were first pointing to.
The one on the right?
Yeah.
So, for herring, you definitely want a lighter mantle than this. This is a really dark mantle gull. So that would be, one of the things that would pull me away from herring for this one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a Western gull.
Yeah. And then the one on the far left, maybe an immature Western. It's hard to really see much of it.
Yeah.
But the leg color seems good for a Western gull, immature.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Bonaparte's in the center. Which again, I really appreciate. It's such a distinctive little gull. It, stands out. All right, well, that is actually it for those photos. I stop screen share. I thank everybody who stuck through all of that. We definitely had some drop off, which I understand. This was a lot about me asking Mark questions that I wanted to ask him for years, and I got he was stuck there and couldn't get away, so I could ask him.
No, very nice job, John. Great display of those birds.
Well, and thank you very much for showing up and giving all of us the benefit of your expertise.
Thanks.
And thank you everybody else who participated. 2 weeks from now, yeah, I see waves. Yes, thank you everyone. 2 weeks from now, we will do birds of prey. And Brody, you have you're not moving your hand, so I assume you have something you want to say.
Yes. I was just gonna ask if I could show a picture of a California quail that I got.
Oh yeah, please do. In fact, hold on, let me put it on speaker view, which I think will make you look bigger for people, or at least for me. And I think for the YouTube live stream, it'll make you look bigger.
Okay. Here it is.
Whoa, neat. So that's a photo that you've printed out?
Yes.
Cool. Yeah. You've got, I'm very envious of all your cool chaparral birds you have out your way, Brody.
Thanks.
Where do you live, Brody?
I live up by Turtle Canyon.
Oh, okay. Very good. Well, you're doing great with your birds.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Brody. You really, I don't say it enough that you really do add a lot to the meetings. I really appreciate that you're out there, you're willing to go out there and guess IDs on these gulls when, a lot of us older birders are a little more shy about that. We don't want to jump out and put our necks out and get in trouble. So that's good that you've got that characteristic.
Yeah, I have a bunch of different pictures of birds in my little book that I have. Band-tailed pigeon right here.
Great. Yeah, no, you're.
Yeah, I have a bunch of different pictures of birds.
Neat. Well, maybe you can share some more next time. I've gone way long in this meeting, so
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay.
But thank you again, everyone, and I will see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you, John. Take care. Bye all.
Mark, thank you, and Linus has already left, but thanks to Linus.
Thanks.
Bye.